Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. As always, thank you so much for being here. I sincerely appreciate it. And as we're coming in, I think we're hitting a really good number. I think this is 147 or 148 live, something like that. So we're getting really close to 3 full years of live sessions, which just to me seems crazy. I can't believe I've been going live for this long, but obviously I love doing it and I love the energy and enthusiasm, the questions, the comments, everything that's coming through from this live community. I appreciate it and I appreciate everybody showing up all the time. So as we're diving in, we'll handle a few items before getting into our conversation. But as you're coming in, please let me know where you're visiting from. Any and all questions and comments are viable. We will, in our downtime, talk about whether we want to decide to go to a startup or a big tech company. That will be our point of conversation for our lulls. But as you're coming in, again, I always love to know that you can hear me, you can see me, and we obviously have a global audience. So it's always cool to see where people are visiting from. Okay, let's take a moment to talk about yesterday's video. Yesterday's video, and this is really relevant for the audience right now, it's probably the most asked question that I've received in these live sessions over the last 3 to 4 years. And that's, well, how do I follow up with my point of contact or my recruiter after rejection? So I definitely recommend you go and watch that video because that question, it basically comes up in every single session, sometimes multiple times a session. And I was long overdue to produce that video. So if you're ever wondering what's the ideal strategy to follow up with my recruiter, and sometimes remember, at a company like a startup, your direct point of contact may be the hiring manager. It's a good video. Take a look. It's really short. It's 7 minutes. And as I always tell people, I am low and slow. You can watch all my content for the most part on 2x. And if you've seen any of these lives before, I definitely recommend you utilize a learning strategy on 2x because you can just consume a lot more content. And the more you get used to 2x, the more comfortable you get. So, again, as people are coming in, no comments, nothing. So I just want to make sure you can hear and see me. And again, of course, let me know where you're visiting from. So just want to highlight a few items and then we can dive into our discussion topic for the day. It's a little weird not to have anybody say anything for the first 3 minutes, but please, again, as you come in, just let me know you can hear and see me okay, please. Thank you. So I have app.practiceinterviews.com pulled up here. As many of you know, okay, from London. Okay, we have where you can see and hear me, which is great. Awesome. So I launched my app a couple weeks ago and we've been getting some really good feedback on the app. And so app.practiceinterviews.com, really what we're trying to do there is we're trying to become really the first AI practice interview tool that's going to set us apart, where we're really focused in on analytics and improving your answers, not just giving you some random feedback and hoping for the best. So check it out if you haven't had an opportunity. Again, it's just app.practiceinterviews.com, or you can get there from practiceinterviews.com. I'm still doing one-on-one interview, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and now I've added the one-on-one strategy session to help people with resumes, LinkedIn profiles, networking, the whole job strategy search. Still have our interview mastery course. Today we have a special offer, $200 off the interview mastery course if you use the coupon code STP. Again, that's STP. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I do go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday. And then I do new original content every Monday. And I definitely am going to start doing some more shorts because the audience seems to like the shorts. And obviously, I know we're kind of in that landscape and in that mindset of doing short content nowadays. So hopefully all of that's helpful. Okay. Let's dive in. I'm just going to say hello to the audience. We have a small audience today, and obviously it takes a little bit of time to get warmed up here. And as we do get warmed up, more people will join. But for now, I'm just going to say hello. We'll talk a little bit about deciding on a startup versus a big tech company, and then come in, crush me with questions. Any and all questions are welcome and appreciated. So, London. Okay, let's see here. Oops, some mic issues. Okay, so let's go to London. Amazing. Love it. London is, anytime I see London, I always have to give the quick side story that I interviewed for 3 different roles while I was at Google to move to London because I always wanted to move to London. And the biggest mistake, and I guess this is just a great learning lesson in general, was trying to convince my wife to move to London. And then after it was all said and done, she finally got the chance to visit and understood. And I probably should have taken a trip there so I could have convinced her because I think that would have been really fun to work for Google in London, one of my favorite cities in the world. Hi, can you hear me loud and clear? That's good. I always double check the mic just to make sure we're doing good. Okay. Jersey, awesome. Virginia, great. Liz from Sarasota, you're working with your online tool and it's irresistible. Just wanted to let you know. Okay. Awesome. I haven't heard that word used, but yeah, we really hope that the tool is providing fantastic feedback. And here's the thing, with any SaaS product, software as a service product, you're going to continue to iterate and make it better and better and better. And so even tomorrow, I have a half-day strategy session to even improve the prompts. We're just going to go in, we're going to do some tweaking to the prompts. We're improving the onboarding piece. We're trying to allow people to add their own questions. We're going to create a beginner, intermediate, advanced mode. Like there's going to be all sorts of bells and whistles that are going to come because the dev doesn't stop once you launch. So for anybody who signs up, they're just going to see it get better and better over time. Hi, thanks for all the content. It's greatly helpful for all your videos. Finished your last round interview with Google last week. It's a specific role, so I don't think there's a team match. Yeah, and that's really, it's kind of like we see all this stuff on team match, but the reality is that a lot of the roles will have a direct hiring manager, right? They're going to have somebody who's identified um, as, hey, this is a need on my team for this position. And so I think everybody kind of looks at the team match, but in my time there, I handled way more roles that had a direct hiring manager than would end up in the team match stage. So good luck. So you finished your last round interview last week. So again, whatever that day was, if you haven't heard back in 5 business days, you want to make sure you follow up. Okay. Hey, Jeff, just also wrapped up Google interviews for the ML Solutions Architect role, L4, L5. Any insights on expected compensation range for London? Okay, for London. Thank you. It's always helpful to get a location. So usually when we're talking about London roles, obviously the reality and the challenging part about London is that it's a very expensive city that doesn't really pay the tech salaries because it's a cost of labor, and the cost of labor for tech is just lower in London. Unfortunately, I hope that changes over time. So when we talk about a base salary, you're probably talking in the low 100s in terms of, and we're talking in pounds, of course. So low to maybe up to more closer to mid 100s. The base salary ranges in London have come up. Now, in terms of bonus, obviously it's going to be a 15% target bonus. Equity. Equity's probably going to land somewhere in the 100s, hopefully the high 100s. And then sign on is a little touch and go, like you don't really know. So, like, what would I be anchoring at in London? Well, I'd be anchoring my base compensation into the mid to high ones. I'd definitely be anchoring the equity probably into the high 2s, even into the 3s. And then I'd definitely be asking for a sign on 10K, 20K, etc. Just the one important piece to remember, and this is what I do for all my London negotiation clients, is I convert the USD equity into pounds, because what they're going to do is they're going to give you a base and bonus and potential sign on in pounds, and then the equity is actually in USD. So anywhere outside of the US, the equity is USD. So I just would always translate that, put that into pounds, and kind of look at the holistic picture of it all in pounds and say, okay, this is enough money for me to move forward with the offer. I hope that helps. Okay, sorry. It looks like I jumped and I went back and forth. So let's go back to this one. So again, I'm just going to restart this really quickly. So you finished your last interview with Google last week for a specific role with no team match. The whole interview has been 4 months. The team and recruiter been slow on the process, waited 1 to 2 months between each interview. Do you know what's going to happen next? Okay. And how long will they take to reach a decision? I never know. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know how long it's going to take them to make a decision. 4 months is definitely leaning on the longer period of time. But yeah, it's a slow process. So again, now that you've passed that last interview, just make sure 5 business days. If they've been slow, 5 business days is absolutely reasonable for you to check in and see how things stand. Okay. Oh, we got a second London person. Awesome. Amazing. And I hope that the European market is picking up a little bit for tech. I mean, it has been ever since like Google's freeze and the layoffs, the European market for tech has been extremely slow, much, much slower than other markets. So hopefully it will start to pick up. Hey, Jeff, what's your take on the overall low comp raises in G this year? Okay. So I have heard a whisper of this, or a couple whispers of this, that the comp raises, especially on base, were lower than normal. They're known for like really good, just regular increases, like 6, 7, 8%. And I think this is just another piece of evidence that they're tightening things up a little bit. Obviously, I had somebody comment on YouTube, I think last week, about Google paying peanuts. And I mean, again, like that's just not the case. Globally, they are a top 1% in compensation. And that's, you can't even argue that, like all the data would support that. But I think that you're going to see some tightening, maybe in terms of increased comp over time. It's really hard to tell. But you're not the only one saying this. Maybe some additional context that you can add. But I did hear that the typical yearly merits were a little bit lower this year. I've heard that. Loving the AI interview tool. Awesome. Love to hear it. For anybody who dives into that tool and puts in the time and effort, you're going to crush it, right? There's no question about it. And the joke I have with all my coaching clients is use the tool and you're going to get Jeff, because I literally built the prompts based on exactly the way I think about answers. Not just, again, it's not generic. It's very specific to my coaching. On average, you believe the refreshers should at least keep comp level given the vesting drop off after the first grant and even without a promo. Well, it'll be harder. It will be harder. And this is okay. So this is a really good conversation. Let's dive into this a little bit. And I can see there's another comment. Let me see. Okay. So when you go to any of these big tech companies, right? Almost all of them are going to have some form of a 4-year vest. And the goal is that if they're not incentivizing you by watching your comp go up, giving you promos and giving you refresher grants, you're not going to be very motivated to stay, because in the last year, you're going to fall off of a cliff. And all of a sudden, all the equity goes away and you go from 300K to 150K. You won't stay. They know that. So they plan accordingly, and refreshers should keep you up even without a promo. But hopefully in a 4-year span, you are getting a promo, because that's really what's going to keep you up. And I want to be really, really transparent with our small audience today. I didn't stay up, right? And so I did get promoted, but I had a couple of weaker refresher grants, and in my last year, and if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I left in February of 2018. And the reason why is that I wasn't going to stay up. I was going to get significantly less comp in 2018 than I got in 2017. Now, there were a ton of other factors to consider, and I wasn't going to stay even if I was going on the upward trend. It was just time for me to leave that role and do something else with my life. But Ideally, they should keep you up. And if they don't, you should consider leaving. And for anybody who's looking at that trajectory, whether it's Google or any other company, what I recommend is that you interview in going into your peak year. So, like for me, 2017 was going to be my peak year. So, what did I do at the end of 2016? I interviewed with Facebook, I interviewed with Netflix because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to leverage that big money year to make even more money. Now, I didn't prepare for those interviews. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and ultimately, here we are. And I'm obviously really happy to be here. But the refreshers should keep you up. And that's why Google, you're going to see all this outward media and all this other stuff. Like people are leaving like crazy. But the reality is that a lot of people will stay because the refresher program is one of the strongest in the world. Okay, did I miss something here, Liz? Let's just see. I think Liz, I'm gonna have you go back. I feel like I lost one of one, but let's just see. Afford to live where you want, include travel costs too. If you have to move outside of London, train commute can eat up savings of moving further away. Okay, I definitely lost a one of one. So for context, Liz, I'm going to have you come back in. Sometimes it's just a little bit of a hiccup with StreamYard, which is the third party I use. I think sometimes we lose comments. So come back in if you can give us piece one. I think I get what you're saying, but I want to make sure I'm responding appropriately. Year over year, I wonder how much refreshers can change by. Yeah, it's a good question of like, well, are they going to change the program, right? Like, what does the overall program look like? Or year over year, your refreshers can vary greatly depending on performance. And remember, a big piece of refreshers is manager discretion. So, for example, at Google, my buddy and I were getting the same performance rating, but they were getting more refreshers. Why? The manager liked them better. Manager discretion. So it is a thing. You do want to build good relationships with your lead or your manager. It's not going to be grossly different, right? Because they have to stay within the band. But even within the band of your performance rating, there's flexibility. So managers got to like you. It's just kind of a part of it. Okay. I hope that helps. But it's a great question. Had your GNL. I feel like I missed mentioning one thing on one question. What is your thoughts on sending a thank you note to that interviewer and basically completing the answer? Do you think this would be detrimental / counterproductive? My name is Marco, by the way. Thanks, Marco. And then, okay, so let's stick with this. I have never seen historically that ever helping any candidate, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it, right? I mean, I want you to be the one. Um, it's funny because I've seen it. People have done it with me and they said, hey, I missed this one question. And like, I wish I had answered it this way. But the reality is that the expectation is in the interview, you're going to answer it in the moment. I wouldn't say it's detrimental or counterproductive. I don't think it's a downswing. I just haven't ever seen it be an upswing. So, if you really feel like it's a step you want to take, Marco, I think it's fine. But I just haven't seen it helping. And I will tell you, even though I knew it wasn't going to help me, I had an interview with a startup in the city in San Francisco for a role. And they came back and they were like, hey, you're not a fit for this reason. And I actually felt like the need, it wasn't a specific question to follow up and counter on why their response to that was so incorrect, which it really was. But just usually when we're like, I'm a fit for this reason, or I would have answered the question this way, it doesn't necessarily hurt you, but I haven't seen it help anybody. Yeah. Okay. So for GCA questions like, what is the future of cloud? Do you think the CFS applies also to this type of question, or can these be answered right away? So again, I just want to make clear, like for, up until like 2020, 2021, maybe early 2021, I was recommending CFS, but now it's CFAS, Clarify, Framework, Assumption, Solution. The assumptions are absolutely critical and necessary part of the methodology. Now, what is the future of cloud? My default mode and the way my brain works is that is too broad of a question. What is the future of cloud? If you just go in and answer it, you might be tackling it from this lens, whereas your interviewer was thinking about it from this lens. So if we don't build any connectivity, I just don't see the success rate being extremely high. What is the future of cloud? Well, I don't know what we're talking about. The future of cloud in what context? In what sense? Are we talking about the future of cloud in terms of its overall impact on technology, on energy costs, on utilization of AI? Like, I just don't have any clue. It's too broad. I'd want to set the framework for how I'm going to tackle that question. I would make some assumptions that I'm looking at it from an energy savings perspective. Again, if the role's hedging in that way, if it's hedging in a different way, I might look at it from a technology perspective, and then I'm going to dive it and solve like I'm in the role. But to me, that's not a straightforward question at all. And the challenge with not clarifying or not using the CFAS method is we are making a ton of assumptions about what our interviewer wants to hear. And I just don't do that personally. I don't think that I ever know what anybody wants to hear. So I try and data gather up front to make sure, okay, I'm really thinking about what they want to hear, and then I'm taking it down that path. And of course, if they don't answer you, at least you're showing thought process, you're showing how you think through things, how you problem solve. Um, just my 2 cents. I hope that helps. If you want more context, please let me know. In the initial discussion with the Google recruiter, I shared my current salary, but after watching your video, I noticed it might not be a good approach. How do I ensure I don't get lowballed now? Well, okay. So this is okay. We can always change, right? So if we've shared data or information, whether that's our current earnings or whether that's expectations that we found later on were way too low, which happens all the time, you just reset. And you can say that in the most gracious and kind way. Let's imagine our fake recruiter is Jane, and Jane goes, okay, here's the great news. We're going to get you a 20% increase on your current earnings. Thank you so much for that, Jane. I really appreciate it. After having the opportunity to speak with the team members, learn more about the roles and responsibilities, and speak with some current and former Googlers, I need to set my expectations at X. So when we go in and we're asked for expectations or we give numbers or whatever it might be, that's usually in the beginning. And we don't know enough about the role. We don't know enough about doing the research. We're put on the spot. So to readjust is totally fine. Remember, the biggest thing I wish everybody really understood about negotiating with Google is if the job pays 100,000 and you ask for $1 million a year, they're not going to rescind the offer. They're just going to say, look, like we just simply will not pay you that. Here's a more realistic number. They're not going to rescind the offer because you go big. And I think that, well, I know that so many people, especially when negotiating with a company like Google, leave tons of money on the table. So I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn last week, and I wanted to do a LinkedIn post. I didn't want to be really harsh on this person, but they reached out and they said, hey, Jeff, I got my initial offer. I'm thinking about asking for a little more. And I just begged them. I said, please ask for a lot more, because what likely happened is that they didn't listen to me. They asked for a little bit more, and they did get a little bit more, probably what they asked for. But at Google, you got to be asking for big numbers. Recruiters are not incentivized to hold back money, and their initial offers are low. Why are their initial offers low? Because that's what the recruiter is approved to give you in the system, meaning the comp analyst hasn't looked at it. It is their lowest baseline offer. And people are accepting that offer. And it's a huge mistake. You're not running any risk of negotiating. So if I could convince anybody and everybody of the importance of just, especially with Google, you can get after it. I can't emphasize that enough. Like, be gracious and kind and just go baller. It will make a huge difference in your total comp. Thank you for your candid answers, Jeffs, and tips. Amazing. Thank you so much. Good questions. I interviewed with Google. In the JD, they mentioned the range is 126 to 190 plus bonus plus equity like L4 for 5 years of experience. How much should be my expectation? I'm in Toronto. So yes. Okay. Sorry. I was reading this incorrectly. Base range 126 to 190, but that's not including bonus and equity. So L4 in Toronto, you should in total comp, most L4s, even if they're non-technical in Toronto, should hit that 200K ish plus range. Um, what I don't really love about these base salary ranges is I've never seen them get to the top of the range. Never. Even in the premium plus markets like Bay or New York, they just never get there. So I I feel like there's like really kind of a little bit of a legality issue with this because I see companies all the time putting this really high end of the range, and I never ever see them coming through on that. And I can tell you right now, there's not a single L4. No. All right, maybe there's an exception, but I don't believe that there's been a single L4 ever hired in Toronto who ever got 190K in base. That's just not a number that's offered in that market. And 190, that's really not a base salary range for any L4 in any market, even a software engineer. L4 in the Bay or New York is not making a 190 base. They'll make a good total comp, but a 190 base is not realistic. So yeah, I don't really love the salary ranges. I feel like it's really, yeah, I feel like it's fake news. See at Eve at the top. Okay. Okay. So we're thinking about London. Yeah, you have to include travel costs. Okay. If you move outside of London, train commute can cut it. And obviously, like we know, it's just we'll equate London to any big metro area, right? You get into the downtown, the urban, it's usually going to be pretty expensive. And if you can get away from it and figure out the commute, and then with the hybrid environments, if you only have to commute a couple days a week, oftentimes getting a little distance can be helpful. And one of the surprising things that I always talk about with my clients who are considering New York or the Bay, I always recommend New York 100% of the time. If they don't care one place or the other, New York is cheaper because it's easier to get away from the money in New York than it is in the Bay. And it's not even close. Go in any direction in the Bay and you're paying a ton of money. In New York, you can go out onto Long Island, pay less. You can go out into North Jersey, pay less. Like there's lots of opportunities to get away from the money a little bit. But it's much, much harder in the Bay. Oh, can you explain what you mean by equity? Is that stock options? Yes. So equity, remember, equity is going to come in different forms at different companies. I would just say, remember that equity is not real money unless there's really two times that equity is real money, right? It's a public company. You're getting those shares. They have value. They can be sold, bought and sold. Then there's also equity that can be sold on the secondary market, right? So companies that are pre-IPO, but basically guaranteed to go IPO, you can sell shares on a secondary market. But a lot of times equity is nothing. Like it's valueless. Like they can give you 10,000 shares of nothing and tell you that it has value, but it doesn't really have value, in my opinion. Okay. But equity, yeah. Anytime we're talking about equity, we're talking about restricted stock units specifically, because that's really what it is in these big tech companies. They're going to give you restricted stock units. And what does that mean? Means they have some restrictions, right? You're going to be granted them at a certain time. Then they're going to hold back a certain amount of shares for taxes. And then you will have blackout periods where you simply cannot sell that equity. Then once you leave the company, you can sell and do whatever you want with that equity. And I still have some of my Google equity. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have more questions. And as we're coming up on it, we're hitting the 30s. So on the 30s, I'm just going to do a 30-second on the 30 prompt on my services. So starting with this, um, if you haven't had the chance to check out our app, the feedback coming in is awesome. And we are going to continue to iterate and improve and improve and improve. And some big improvements are coming really, really quickly. I'm doubling down on the dev cost to make sure that we are getting all the bells and whistles in there as quickly as possible. But the product we have today, the feedback is awesome. So, really excited about that. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, you can practice a few questions for free by just signing up. And then the paid version will allow you to enter your own job description and do a couple of other things. Still doing one-on-one coaching. So one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions for resume, LinkedIn, and networking. Special offer on the interview mastery course, $200 off if you use the coupon code STP. That coupon code is only available till 11:59 Pacific time today. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday, new original content every Monday. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, please consider subscribing. All right, let's dive right back into it. My base increase was 1.2%. Not sure how much of that is relative placement in the pay band. Yeah, that's not good. I haven't really heard of that. And again, maybe if you're willing, like again, I want to tread lightly, but if you're willing, you can tell us a little bit more. Like, is that just what you heard from everybody, or were other people doing well? Like, if you can share context, please. If not, totally cool. Okay, so this is bouncing off the last person who's in the hiring process. Been in the process for 3 months and I'm waiting to see if I can get an interview with the hiring manager. My recruiter stopped responding because they got a new position and I got a new recruiter. I got my feedback positive and it was sent to the hiring manager. Keep your heads up. Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, I mean, it's brutal. Like we all know that Google needs to totally blow up their hiring process and start over. Make decisions within teams instead of at the organizational level. And just they added the new Google hiring assessment. If you haven't seen that, I did a short on it. I also did a blog post on it if you want to check it out. But now they've added another layer. And there just seems to be a lack of willingness from leadership to blow up the hiring process and start over. And it needed to be blown up 10 years ago. And so nobody's willing to take on that challenge. So it continues to be slow. And the result is two things. One, Google is losing opportunities to hire the best talent in the world because they're moving slow. And they're creating some bad branding as well because people are getting really, really frustrated at the length of the process. So, but with all that said, got to keep your head up. Absolutely. Hi, Jeff from Japan. Hey, how's it going? It's getting pretty late your time. You're waiting on the HC result, but I think I could do well thanks to your vids. Okay, cool. Amazing. I wish you the best of luck. And thanks for showing up so late. I appreciate it. But yeah, definitely keep us posted. If you have the time and come back and want to check in at this time, please let us know how things are going. My biggest regret about my last role was not working with you, Jeff, on negotiating. Was underwater in London. While cash is not everything, US folk need to research housing, commute, and bills. Okay. Taxes just went up. Utilities are up. We have to fudge my salary by 10K to get the contract for flat. What I needed in central London. One or two of my friends are Brits are moving out of London. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is not a prompt on my services. Okay. I just want to be really, really clear. You don't have to hire me, but in the negotiation phase, I get kind of sad because people they don't understand there's this loss aversion. There's this fear of hiring somebody to help them negotiate. And typically, the difference between somebody who hires a negotiation coach and doesn't, especially in big tech, is it's not like 5K or 10K. It's usually 50, 60, 70, 100, 200K plus. I mean, I know what I've negotiated for some of my clients. And to say that I've gotten them 200, 250K more than they were anticipating, that's happened many times. Now, obviously, at those numbers, we're talking L7 director level roles, but we've definitely gone baller. But L4, L5, L6, if you're not hiring a negotiation coach, you're leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table per year. And so it's just something that I strongly emphasize. There's tons of negotiation coaches out there. I'm not the cheapest, right? But hire somebody, get that help. It's such a critical moment in our lives to get the comp right, and the lack of willingness to give up a little bit of money to get a ton of money. It still surprises me. I feel like my calendar should be full of negotiation clients every week because I know I can maximize the comp, especially with a company like Google where I've negotiated over 500 offers with them. And that was a little bit of a tangent, but it's really important that we impart the knowledge, right? And just say, hey, look, like, just if you're in that stage, definitely something you should consider. You are welcome. Senior program manager in Google Cloud. You had 2 RRK interviews with cross-functional teams. Recruiter said that I will have final interviews with hiring team now. 1 RRK, 1 googliness, no GCA. That seems weird. Yeah, I would just double down and check, right? Like, you had 2 RRK interviews with cross-functional teams. Typically the way it works is you'll have an RRK with the direct team, an RRK with a cross-functional team. That's their cross-functional interview for program managers, a googliness and leadership, and a GCA interview. So maybe one of those first 2 interviews was actually a GCA interview. I'm not sure, but you might want to just get some clarity. But typically, it's for program managers. It's 2 RRKs, a GNL, and a GCA. That's the way it's always been. Hi, Jeff. Had a call with a Google recruiter recently. They gave me the upper range, which is actually less than my current total comp at Amazon. How should I proceed? They gave me an upper range. Did they tell you it was an upper range? Did they say this is the upper range of total comp for the role? So the roles in L3, L3s are, yeah, L3 roles are going to be pretty tight. But just remember, there's always going to be an opportunity to negotiate. But yeah, I mean, you got to make comp decisions that are good for you. Then you have to think about trajectory too. Like Amazon's comp over time just typically and historically just hasn't been as good as Google's. So like, are you willing to go for a little less or flat in order to go up quickly? But just what they're presenting in the initial stages, I would still see the process through and make sure that you're negotiating really strongly. I always want people to see the process through, right? Because we don't know. They say things early on, but we can always try to negotiate. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have more questions. Okay. We're about to hit the 40-minute mark. Most of these lives are going an hour, a little bit over an hour. And obviously, I'll chat for as long as people want to chat. Please, for the audience that's here, any questions, any comments, any feedback, it's all helpful and valuable. So now that we have a down moment, if questions come in, I'll definitely get to them. But let's talk about deciding on a startup versus a big tech company. Like, how do you go about that process? Because a lot of people try to decide, okay, is a startup environment right for me? Is a big tech company right for me? And there's a really good foundational starting place when trying to make that decision. Do you like to build things from scratch, or do you like to improve upon already established systems and processes? Because if you're somebody who really likes to build things, then a startup environment usually is going to work out really great. Lots of flexibility. You wear a lot of hats. Definitely some added stress because of having to build the processes and doing the work. But it's a good foundational item. Now, In big tech, it's like you are going to have a broad impact potentially on millions to billions of users, but you're going to be working in this little tiny narrowed down niche, and processes, items, everything is going to be pretty strongly established. So you have to be willing to build on top of things that have already been built and really show a willingness to, again, make small improvements. Trying to come in and change everything, you're just, there's no way. You're going to run into too much red tape. You're going to be battling against a lot of things that are just 100% outside of your control. So these are a couple of things to be considering. Startup, let's talk about it from a money perspective. Startup versus big tech company. We know that the big tech companies pay basically the best in the world. So if we're going to throw the Googles or Apples, Meta, Amazon, whatever it might be, these companies are all going to pay you extremely well, and the money's guaranteed, right? And like, yeah, we know the stock market goes up and down, but look, it's a public company, it's viable. Now at a startup, big risk, big reward. You get it in at a startup early. They really show a good trajectory. They get bought by one of these big tech companies, they go public. You're going to have an opportunity to make a ton of money. It's a small percentage of people. So when you're considering one versus the other, I think that the first item is a little bit more important. Building versus enhancing. Do you like to build or do you like to enhance? That's a great question. Then the last thing that I want to just bring up quickly is, what does the leadership look like? Because people do not leave companies, they leave managers, and that will be something that we're talking about for forever, right? And so how do you like the leadership team at the startup? Do you believe in their vision? Do you believe in the long-term opportunity? And same in a big tech company. Did you get a good feeling for that hiring manager that you spoke with? Were you able to really probe, ask them a lot of questions, get a sense of whether they're a negative or positive person? So the manager, to me, like, the company actually matters less than the manager, because the manager has so much control on your happiness, your well-being, etc. So these are just a few things to consider. But I think sometimes people see the shiny, like, oh, this company's going to go public, I'm going to make millions of dollars, and that is like the smallest of percentage of people who have actually been fortunate enough to be in that scenario. And sometimes with that startup too, a lot of people end up hanging or holding on much longer than they want to, because they're just waiting to see if that company goes public or gets acquired so they can get the equity in the public company, etc. Okay, that was a little bit of a startup versus big tech company. We are out of questions, so we can just take a moment to breathe, see if any additional questions want to come in. um, all these sessions are intended to be Q&A sessions, and I just want to make sure that the community feels as though they get their questions answered. You'll see all LinkedIn comments, all YouTube comments, anything that you put in my Slack group. I'm going to answer everything. I won't always get to it that exact second or that exact minute, but I will answer it. And that's what I hope to continue to do, is continue to show up for this community. Hey, it's been weird, right? Ever since 2022, 2023, 2024 have been super sleepy. But I want to continue to show up for the community as much as I can. Today was a little bit of a slow day, but as questions continue to come in, I'll answer them and we'll hang out as long as we can. You're in team matching for a senior SWE in Google Poland. Over 2 months, I had calls with two teams that completely didn't match my skills. They understandably chose other candidates. Okay, and it looks like maybe there's a 2 of 2 coming in. Yeah, this is tricky, because for Google Poland, the role they're going to hire the most for is SWEs. Like, that's the only really good data point we have in the Warsaw office specifically. But I just want you to hang out, hang in there as much as you can, continue to stay in touch. That's really all you can do in the team match stage. And just understand that these team match stages, they need to create a cutoff, right? Whether it's 3 months or 6 months, there just needs to be a cutoff at the team match stage where they just move forward. Because I have I have people that have been waiting for 18 months and they're still lingering with them, but they're not really helping them. So there needs to be a more clearly delineated process there. Um, but I just would encourage you to hang out as long as you can. Do you think startups can offer the same level of salary and compensation? That has been my concern. Typically, no. One of the biggest ways to make sure and ensure that you're making good money at a startup, in my opinion, is startups that have a good bonus structure. Because you're usually going to be a higher cash position, right? So your base and bonus will be higher. But the bonus is one that can make it much, much closer to a bigger or more public company. If you are going to go after a startup and they are going to say, hey, it's 200K base and a 30% target bonus, we just want to qualify what are the components of that bonus. Specifically, what I mean by that is the bonus company performance, individual performance, or both. We really need to get clarification on what the makeup of that bonus is, and then let's talk about the secondary item. What percentage has that bonus paid out on the last 3 years for this team? If they're like, oh, that's confidential or we can't tell you, you'd say, well, on average, is it paying out 30%, 40%, 2%? Because they should be able to provide that historical data for you as well. So usually the comp is going to come in much, much cash heavier. Again, the options, the equity they give you, I would just say it's not real money. It could be at some point down the road, but I don't count it as real money up front. I hope that helps. All right, the two of two. Let the recruiter know that these teams didn't overlap with the tech I specialize in. Is there something else I can do? The process is going very slow and you're starting to worry. Yeah, and there's so you can follow up with roles that you think are a fit. And I would recommend, even though it's not exactly the same, go to that video I posted on YouTube yesterday. And if you go to the YouTube description, you can use that exact template to send your recruiter roles that you think are a fit for your background in your market or other markets that you know it's easy to transfer into or where sponsorship could be really simple. Just my recommendation, just don't inundate them with 5 or 10, give them one at a time. But again, in that YouTube video yesterday, there's a template that could also be repurposed for team match when you've been in the team match stage for a long time. I hope that helps. Hi, Jeff. I'm thinking about applying for tech jobs in Toronto from abroad in Europe, and I don't need visa sponsorship. I heard that not being in Canada negatively affects my chances. Is that true? You don't need visa sponsorship. I would really want you to clarify that. So you're in Europe and you don't need visa sponsorship, meaning that maybe you're a Canadian citizen but currently living in Europe. Is that what it is? Let's see what your second comment is. Because of that, because I'm still young with savings, I'm thinking about moving there without a job secured to job hunt. How is the job market right now in Toronto? Okay, so again, for a little bit more context, just to help me understand, um, are you a Canadian citizen? Would be because we can't just move from country to country. Like we're going to have restrictions, right, in terms of how long we can stay in any one country for any given time. If we're not a citizen, now if you're a citizen, of course, no issue there. Maybe you're in Europe now and you grew up in Canada. I don't really know. Toronto is a good job market. It's historically been a good job market for tech. And from what I've seen, it's been a little bit slower lately. But again, it's just not requiring sponsorship is you still need a reason to be there. And in Canada, I don't know the laws in Canada. For being in the US, I should, but my best guess is you probably visit Canada for 29 days, 30 days before they boot you out of there if you don't have citizenship, dual citizenship, whatever it may be, that allows you to stay there for a longer period of time. Of course, there are countries that are very very good for moving there without that item, but other countries are going to be more strict, and I think Canada is one of them. Okay, you're a European citizen, and Canada has the IEC program that allows citizens from partner countries to get a 2-year work visa. Okay, but you probably have to confirm. And again, I don't know enough about the laws, but you'd have to probably confirm that you have a job to get the work visa. I don't think you can just go there, but I can. I'm not. I just we'll always flag the items when I really don't know what I'm talking about, and this is one of those items. If it's just open, maybe it's just open. I just don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about those specific laws to give you great advice, but I can tell you two things. Toronto's a good city, very urban. It's expensive, but so is Europe. Um, and do you like cold weather? Because to me, Toronto would be off my list because it falls in a place that's cold. So again, just my 2 cents. Okay, let's pause here for a second. I just want to thank everybody so much for being here today. We definitely had a slower than normal audience, and that's okay. I just appreciate everybody showing up, and I will show up for one person every single week as long as people want to continue to show up for these lives. We tend to get good engagement and go about an hour, which I really appreciate. Everybody showing up and taking the time. I'm going to go into my wrap up mode. And then if any additional questions come in while I'm in wrap up mode, I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Looks like one just came in here. Let's grab this one first. Hey, Jeff, thanks for the advice on the Slack channel regarding my sourcer. This person has no sense of urgency and is taking 4+ days to get back to me about sending my profile out. To get back to me about sending my profile out is just unacceptable. Yeah, let's go to the second one. Being stuck like this for almost 2 years is just ridiculous. And yeah, so we'll keep your confidentiality, even though I know your name. But just to say, I just don't think that anybody should be in the team match stage for extended periods of time. It just creates a negative experience the longer it continues to occur. So um, look, at some point you may need to turn your back on Google and say this isn't worth it. This isn't worth my time. They're not respecting me. And what I always like to disconnect is I'm pretty tough on Google's HR, right? The HR department, recruiting, I'm tough on them. And I can be because I was there. I know I did the job. I did the role. I know how I followed up with candidates, and it was much better than most of what we hear. But I had some really simple systems and processes that I implemented to get there. But I think sometimes if this is our experience, we just need to question, hey, like, do I want to continue to do this? And maybe you take a full step back and you say, hey, like, I just want to go after something else. Um, and then whenever they do close out your application, you have to give them really harsh feedback. This is how you treat people for 2 years. You let me linger out here for 2 years with non-responsiveness. They need to make a decision. If this is the way they're going to handle it, they either need to cut you off or they need to find you a job. But keeping you in limbo for 2 years is just, I know it's tough. I think you need to move on. That would be my recommendation. I don't want you to completely shut the door, like let them shut the door, but I would be looking at other opportunities, which I'm sure you are. You're welcome. Okay, let's go into that wrap up. Again, if any additional questions come in, I'm happy to answer them. So if you haven't checked it out, app.practiceinterviews.com. Hey, it's free. You can practice a few questions for free. You can't enter your own job description, but you can just test it out. See if you like the tool. So log in, sign up, try a few, give us feedback. If you have any feedback, all user feedback is valuable. All feedback, every single comment, question, piece of advice It's all helpful. You only want to utilize online platforms that are taking and considering all feedback. That's how we built the tool, and we'll continue to do that way. And by the way, some of my hypotheses, some of the hypothesis or multiple hypotheses that I had when I started this were wrong, right? And the users told me that, and we adapted and adjusted accordingly. So please feel free to check that out. Now, still doing the one-on-one coaching, one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one strategy sessions, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and our interview mastery course. For today, we have a special offer, $200 off if you use the coupon code STP. Again, that's STP, and you get $200 off that course. It's available just till 11:59 Pacific time today. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday. New original content every single Monday. If you like what I did today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, consider subscribing. I think we hit a good stopping point. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here, and I will be back next week. Take care.